My husband used to say, "A house is more than bricks, Margaret. It's a heart. It remembers." That house, my house, was the place where we built everything, where he painted the nursery walls when our son was born, where I planted roses out front so the neighbors would smell them when they walked by, where we danced in the kitchen on stormy nights while the rain drummed against the windows like music. For 50 years, it was my world, my pride, my legacy. But after my husband passed, silence settled into those walls. Silence and my son. He said, "Mom, it's too much for you. Come live with us. We'll take care of you." At first, it sounded like love, like comfort, like family. So I packed a single suitcase. I locked the house, kissed the roses, and moved into their bright, modern home. At first, I tried to be grateful. I cooked dinners. I folded laundry. I told bedtime stories to my grandchildren when they let me. I stayed quiet when my daughter-in-law rolled her eyes at my old-fashioned recipes. They said, "It's fine, Mom. We'll order in." So I stopped cooking. When my knees hurt, I asked if someone could drive me to the doctor. They said, "It's too far, Mom. Just take some aspirin." So I stayed home. When I asked to sit with them in the living room, to watch their shows, to share their laughter, they lowered their voices, changed the subject, or left the room altogether. I became a ghost in their house. At first, I thought it was me. Maybe I was too slow. Maybe I asked too much. Maybe I was what they whispered in the dark, a burden. But then I started to hear more. My grandson, he's 17, tall, smug, always with his phone, looked at me one night at dinner and said, "Why do we have to take care of Grandma? She doesn't even do anything. She's just dead weight." He laughed. His sister laughed. And my son, my own son, didn't correct him. He didn't defend me. He just kept eating. That word. Dead weight. It slammed into me like a fist. I smiled weakly, pretending not to hear, but inside something cracked. From that day, the whispers grew louder. "She's eating us out of house and home. She's too slow. She drags us down. Do you know how much it costs to keep her here?" My daughter-in-law, her voice sharp like glass. "We could use that room for an office. Why are we wasting it on her?" I cried into my pillow at night, pressing the blankets against my mouth so they wouldn't hear. I told myself it was stress, frustration, nothing more. Families fight. Families say cruel things. But then came the day I found the papers. I was dusting the shelves in my son's office, something he never thanked me for, when a folder slipped open. Inside were legal documents, drafts, contracts, plans to sell my house, the home where I raised him, the home his father built. And in those papers, in neat black ink, was a plan to put me in a long-term care facility, a nursing home, cheap, cold, far from town. I stared at the page, my hands trembling so hard the dust rag fell to the floor. They weren't just cruel. They weren't just ungrateful. They were plotting to erase me. When I asked about it at dinner, my son didn't even deny it. He just sighed, exasperated, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Mom," he said, "you can't live forever. The house is wasted on you. It's better if I handle it now. You'll be more comfortable in a care facility. And honestly, we can't keep carrying you. You're just dead weight." There it was again, that phrase. I stared at him across the table, my heart pounding, my mouth dry. My grandchildren smirked. My daughter-in-law leaned back in her chair, satisfied. Something inside me broke that night, but something else sparked too. Because while they thought I was powerless, while they thought I was a useless old woman with no teeth left to bite, I still owned the house. Every brick, every tile, every memory, every debt. And suddenly, for the first time in months, I didn't feel weak. I felt dangerous. But what I discovered next changed everything. They didn't stop after that night. In fact, it got worse. I thought maybe they'd feel guilty, Maybe they'd realize what they'd said, but instead it was like tearing the mask off. Their true faces showed, and they didn't even try to hide them anymore. My daughter-in-law started complaining openly. Every bill that arrived, she dropped on the table with a thud, staring at me. See, this is what happens when you have extra mouths to feed. I wanted to scream, "Extra mouth? I'm your husband's mother. I raised him. I cooked for him. I kept a roof over his head when he was a child." But I stayed quiet. My son echoed her words. "It's not sustainable, Mom. We can't keep paying for everything while you sit here. Times are hard." Hard? He drove a brand new car. His wife had closets full of handbags that cost more than my monthly pension. The children went on ski trips, vacations to Europe. And I, an old woman who asked for nothing, was the problem. The humiliation didn't stop at home. At a family barbecue in front of neighbors, my grandson joked, "Careful, Grandma might fall again. Then we'll all go bankrupt." Laughter from everyone, even my son. I felt my cheeks burn hot with shame. I set my plate down and went inside before they saw the tears. I wanted to pack my things that night, walk out, go anywhere else. But where would I go? Who would take me in? I had no siblings left, no close friends nearby, and the retirement home my son whispered about. I knew what those places were like. Loneliness wrapped in beige walls, forgotten old souls staring at televisions until they died. No, I couldn't go there, but I couldn't stay either. Each day the whispers turned into commands. "Don't sit in the living room, Mom. We're watching something you wouldn't understand. Stay out of the kitchen. You'll only get in the way. Don't touch the thermostat. You don't pay the bills." It was like I didn't belong in their world anymore, like I was an intruder in my own bloodline. And then came the night that sealed my fate. I was walking down the hall, heading to bed, when I heard them in the dining room, their voices low but sharp, my daughter-in-law first. "I'm telling you, James, we can't keep her here. She's dragging us down. We need that house." My son, "I know, I'm working on it. Once she signs, it's ours. We can sell it, pay off the mortgage, maybe even move somewhere better." She laughed. "And what about your mother? What do we do with her?" A pause. Then his voice, cold. "She'll manage. We'll put her in care. It's what's best. She's dead weight now." Dead weight. That word again. Like a curse. Like a knife in my chest. I pressed my hand to the wall to steady myself. I wanted to storm in, to shout, to remind him of every sacrifice I ever made. The nights I worked double shifts so he could go to college, the meals I skipped so he could eat, the years I poured into raising him after his father died, but my legs wouldn't move. I just stood there, trembling. My heart pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it. Dead weight. They were planning my erasure. The next morning he came to me with the papers. "Mom," he said, his voice smooth, rehearsed, "you know this house is too much for you. Why don't you sign it over to me? That way I can take care of everything. You won't have to worry anymore." I looked at him. My son. My flesh and blood. And all I saw was greed. "I'll think about it," I whispered. His jaw tightened. "Don't take too long. It's for your own good." For my own good. That day, I felt the weight of betrayal heavier than ever. Not just words, not just whispers, but action. They weren't waiting for me to die. They wanted to strip me alive. From then on, the atmosphere turned poisonous. My daughter-in-law left brochures for nursing homes on my nightstand. My grandson locked me out of the Wi-Fi, laughing when I asked for the password. My granddaughter rolled her eyes every time I spoke, muttering, "Why is she even here?" I shrank into myself, moving silently through the house, afraid of being seen, afraid of giving them more ammunition. But inside something grew. Not anger, not yet, something colder, a seed of resolve. Because if they thought I was powerless, they were wrong. The betrayal stung, yes. It shattered me, Yes, but it also sharpened me. I remembered every line my husband ever told me about protecting what was ours, about keeping papers close, about never underestimating the value of a signature. And suddenly, I knew. They thought I was dead weight. But they were about to learn that weight can crush. I'll never forget the night I broke. It was late. The house was quiet except for the faint sound of my daughter-in-law's laughter drifting from the bedroom down the hall. I sat alone in my room, clutching the photo of my husband, his smile, his strong hands, his eyes that always told me, "I'll protect you." But he wasn't here anymore, and I was nothing. The word echoed in my head like a drum beat. Dead weight, dead weight, dead weight. I whispered it aloud, my voice trembling. Is that all I am now? The tears wouldn't stop. My pillow was soaked through. My body shook so violently I thought I might collapse. And in that moment, I believed them. I believed I was useless, forgotten, disposable. I wanted to disappear. For a moment, I even thought, maybe if I just go quietly, it'll be easier for them. Maybe that would make them happy. But then, something inside me snapped. No, I wasn't dead weight. I was the one who held that family together when my husband died. I was the one who kept the lights on, who sold my jewelry so my son could stay in college. I was the one who cooked, who cleaned, who sacrificed every ounce of myself so they could thrive. And now they dared to call me dead weight? I sat up, wiped my tears, looked at my husband's photo. They don't know who they're dealing with, I whispered. It was like he was answering me. I remembered something he used to say whenever he paid the bills. Always keep your name on the papers, Margaret. Never let anyone take that from you. The house, my house, it was still mine. Every brick, every wall, every penny owed. That night, I crept to the bottom drawer of my nightstand where I kept a small fireproof box. My hands shook as I unlocked it and pulled out the deeds, the property title. Every legal paper that proved, beyond doubt, the house was still under my name. They thought I was powerless? No, I had power, real power. And then another thought came, darker. If they wanted the house so badly, if they were drooling over it like vultures circling a carcass, maybe I should let them have it, but not the way they expected. I started pulling out old bills, tax notices, repair estimates, things I had quietly paid for years, stretching my tiny pension to cover them. The house wasn't just walls and memories. It was responsibility, debt, burden, a burden they would never be able to carry. My lips curled into a smile. For the first time in months, I felt alive, strong. The next morning, I called an old friend, my lawyer, the same one who had helped me and my husband draft our wills years ago. His voice was calm, steady. "Margaret," he said, "as long as your name is on that deed, you decide what happens, not them." That was all I needed to hear. I spent the next weeks preparing quietly, collecting documents, organizing every unpaid tax bill, every looming repair order, every expense that came with that house. I stacked them neatly in a folder, and all the while I played my role perfectly. I shuffled slowly down the hallway, pretending weakness. I nodded meekly when my son demanded answers. I even smiled faintly when my grandson called me useless again. Let them believe it. Let them think I was fading, because when the time came, I would strike harder than they ever imagined. Every night as I sealed another envelope, I whispered to myself, they think I'm dead weight, but soon I'll be the weight that drags them under. The seed of revenge had bloomed, and there was no going back. They thought the easy part was signing. They thought the prize would be theirs the moment the ink dried. I invited them to dinner, a small celebration. My son smiled like a man who had already counted his gains. My daughter-in-law set the silver, careful and precise. The grandchildren hovered like eager guests at an auction. I brought the folder, neat, heavy, full of paper. They leaned in as if they were about to watch a magic trick. "Sign here," my son said, so casual, so certain. He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't meet my eyes. He was already calculating the paint colors in his head. I slid the pen to him with hands that did not tremble. I pressed the deed and the transfer forms across the table. I watched as he skimmed, as his eyes flicked to the big bold line that said, "Transfer of ownership." His finger tapped where his signature should go. He signed. So fast, so greedy. My daughter-in-law signed. The kids scrawled their names for fun. They cheered. Glasses clinked. They whispered about listings, renovations, profit. I smiled. I applauded. I even dabbed at my eyes with a napkin, playing the part of the grateful, harmless old mother. They carried the papers up to his office the next day. Jubilant. Men of the world. Winners. 2 days later, envelopes started arriving. A letter from the county. A large red notice. Unpaid property taxes, demand for payment. Another. Emergency roof repair needed. Estimate attached. A third. Code violation. Unsafe structure. Immediate action required. They read them together. Their faces shifted. The color dropped out slowly like a bruise forming. "It's just paperwork," my son muttered at first, forcing a laugh. "We'll handle it." But the bills kept coming. An inspector's report landed on the kitchen table, photos included, rotted beams, termite damage in the foundation, a cracked sewer line. The estimated repairs were more than twice what my yearly pension had ever been. Then the tax office called. A voice with no warmth said, "If the outstanding taxes aren't settled within 30 days, a lien will be placed on the property." I watched my son as the panic seeped in. He tried to stay brash. Phone calls, hurried meetings, promises to borrow, to refinance, but his words sounded thin. His veneer cracked. They sold things. The granddaughter's antique wedding ring. The grandson's gaming consoles. The lawnmower pawned for a few hundred that vanished like mist. They raffled off furniture to neighbors. Each sale, a little humiliation. Each sale, a confession. Neighbors who once waved walked by with pity on their faces. Rumors slipped through town faster than a rumor should. They inherited her house, but it's full of problems. I heard they can't pay the taxes. It's all falling apart. One night, my daughter-in-law burst into the kitchen, voice high and raw. "Your house. Why didn't you tell us? Why wasn't there? I thought we were getting a prize, not a money pit." I looked at her, at the rage, at the fear. Her mascara smeared. Her hands trembled. She clutched the inspection photographs like a weapon. "You asked for it," I said quietly. "You begged for it. You signed." She pointed a finger at me. "You tricked us. You must have known. You conned us." I felt no guilt, only satisfaction, a slow, cool calm that settled into my bones. The creditors called at all hours. A roofer knocked on the door and offered an estimate for immediate work, if they paid half up front. They argued about the money, about priorities, about who would take responsibility. My son mortgaged his pride and made calls to old friends. Promises were made that couldn't be kept. At a community meeting, the city inspector publicly announced code violations associated with the property. People murmured. A reporter even showed up one afternoon, camera rolling down the street as the family rushed out to control the damage. My son's face flashed on a phone screen with the headline, "Local Family Burdened by Inherited Home." Shame is a heavy blanket. It smothers you slowly. They slept poorly. They closed the curtains and argued in whispers. The children's friends stopped coming over. Invitations that had been easy before evaporated. And then came the auction notice. An absent creditor filed a lien and scheduled a public auction to recover unpaid debts. A date. A time. The house my husband had painted. The room where my son had learned to tie his shoes, now listed in legal ink as collateral, to be sold for debt. My son begged me to help. He knelt in front of me in the kitchen, hat in hand, like a man who had been humbled by the sudden collapse of everything he thought he owned. "Mom," he said, voice breaking. "Please, we didn't know. We made a mistake. Help us. Sign this new form. Let me buy the house back from the auction. Just help us." I watched the man who once carried me across thresholds, the boy I'd dressed for school, the son I had nursed through fever and heartache. He looked small, hollowed. I could have forgiven. I could have taken pity. I could have sealed this with one simple nod. Instead, I took my time. I looked at him until he looked away. I remembered every word, every laugh, every callous comment. "You called me dead weight," I said softly. "You told me I was useless. You planned to sell my home while I was still breathing. You mocked me in front of my grandchildren." He tried to interrupt. "We love you, Mom. Not love," I said. "Convenience." His shoulders slumped. He couldn't deny it. Not anymore. "I'll help," I said finally, "on one condition." He leaned forward, hope warring with fear. "Anything." "You must publicly apologize," I said. "In front of the neighbors, in front of the inspector, on camera if you must. You will take responsibility. You will fix what you broke." He swallowed. Pride and profit fought in his eyes. He nodded because he had no other choice. The apology was humiliating. It aired like laundry. He stood with the reporter, voice breaking as he admitted their failure, promised to make amends, vowed to care for his mother, and the whole town watched. His business contacts shrank away. The friends who'd lent money vanished. The marriage groaned under the weight. It didn't restore everything. It didn't erase the way they had treated me. But the scales had tipped. The family's secret greed had been dragged into the light, exposed and raw. And as they scrambled to put the pieces back together, I sat on my porch and watched. My heart beat steady. The trap had sprung. The fallout had begun. What happens next? They are scrambling. Their world is smaller now. But the last card is yet to be played. The auction never happened. My son scraped together enough, barely, to cover the taxes and delay the creditors. But the house wasn't his golden prize anymore. It was a burden, a millstone around his neck. Every time he looked at it, he saw the debt, the repairs, the shame. And me? I finally felt free. For the first time in years, I woke up without the heavy knot in my chest, the whispers at the dinner table, the sly looks between my son and his wife, the feeling that I was in the way. All gone. They didn't dare call me dead weight anymore. Not after I had shown them how heavy I could truly be. The neighbors treated me differently too. They stopped looking at me with pity. They stopped assuming I was the helpless old widow clinging to her memories. No, they saw me now as something else, sharp, resilient, untouchable. I wasn't invisible anymore. Even my grandchildren looked at me differently. There was respect in their eyes, even if it was tangled with confusion. They didn't understand the full scope of what had happened, not yet, but they knew I wasn't someone to be dismissed. And maybe, just maybe, they would grow up remembering that. As for my son and his wife, their marriage bent under the weight of all the bills and the gossip. Arguments spilled into the street. She blamed him for being foolish. He blamed her for pushing too hard. Neither of them ever blamed me, not out loud. They knew better now. But in the quiet moments, I sometimes caught my son looking at me. Not with love, not even with anger. Just a kind of haunted realization. The look of a man who finally understood the price of greed. I didn't gloat, not openly. Revenge isn't always about shouting your victory from the rooftops. Sometimes it's in the silence. Sometimes it's in sitting on your porch with a cup of tea, while the very people who once dismissed you scramble to fix what they broke. I tended my garden again. I laughed with neighbors. I even joined the community quilting circle I'd avoided for years. I stitched patterns that told stories, my fingers steady, my mind calm. One day, maybe I'd sew this story into fabric, an heirloom not of wealth, but of wisdom. And in that calm, I realized something. They had wanted me to disappear, to fade into the background of my own home. But instead, I became the main character. I wrote the ending. I handed them exactly what they asked for, on paper with signatures, and watched as they learned the hard way that every gift comes with weight. My husband used to say, "The house carries the memory of those who built it." He was right. Our house was never meant to be sold, never meant to be stripped for profit. It was meant to protect, and in the end, it protected me in its own twisted way. So here's the lesson, as simple as I can make it. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never mistake silence for surrender, and never ever underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. Because when they called me dead weight, they thought they were insulting me. But in truth, they handed me the sharpest weapon I could ever wield, and I used it.